right, cool, everybody. Good evening and welcome to Open Chair, that's backed by the Luries and the Creative Circle. I'm Suhana Gordon, and the reason we have Open Chair is because one of the greatest challenges we face as an industry is empty chairs. There are far too few women occupying those chairs and far too many of them leaving. So Open Chair was formed with this purpose of creating FaceTime and access to senior industry leaders so that young women can speak to them and have that engagement and have some inspiration.
So yeah, just to take further from that, I'm Simone, I'm part of Open Chair. So apart from creating the FaceTime with the young people in our industry to engage with industry leaders whom we will introduce, it's important that us at the Open Chair also create a space for discussions of relevant industry matters. So I think that it's only good for us to start also before we start the event this evening, that we actually just make a little bit of an announcement with regards to COVID-19. Our industry, like many others, have been affected by the virus, and we urge everybody to exercise extreme caution and respect each other. If you've come into contact with someone with COVID, or if you are infected, please do the right thing and notify those whom you've been in contact with. It really isn't a sin to have the virus, and we feel that a lot of people have been stigmatized, marginalized if they say they do have COVID. That shouldn't be the case at all. Our industry is all about people, we're people-centric, so we should really embrace ourselves and encourage people that do have COVID to heal, to give encouragement, love and support, and to respect each other. And we're also calling on all of our industry leaders as well to encourage your staff, colleagues and your work families to stay safe and to protect each other.
Agree, Simone, and I think part of being a good leader means to serve others and to have your people's best interests at heart. So, and if anyone wants to read a good book on that, it's called Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. And while we're speaking about good leadership, tonight we'll be talking to three incredible leaders. Our mentors tonight are Phumi Gobeze, MD of Joe Public, Camilla Clark, ECD of Hello FCB, and Khabiseng Matao, who's the co-founder and Chief Creative Officer of Think Creative Africa.
Cool. Hey guys. Everyone. Great to be here.
Lovely to have you ladies here. And then, because myself and Suhana, we're just here to open up the platform, so we're not going to talk much, we'll just moderate the evening. But the people that will be doing all the talking and asking all the questions are our lovely and beautiful mentees. Silofelo, who's from the Niche Guys. Your camera is on. I'm not sure if I can see if the camera's on or off, but if you could just wave for us there. We've got Gloria, who's from Christina Mix as well in the house.
Hi guys.
Tracy, who's a freelance writer who has her own little company as well. Steve, who's from Wunderman Thompson, yay, Wunderman in the hizzy. Kanalelo from Joe Public, who's just joined us as well, and Nompumelelo, who's from King James. Cool.
In the chat group, I'll be sharing the hashtags you can use while we have this discussion, if you want to share anything on social media. And I think now let's get on to introducing our mentors. In 5 minutes, they're going to tell you a little bit about themselves, but also share something that is a piece of paramount advice that they would have given to their younger self, their 20-year-old self. So Mpumi, let's begin with you.
Okay, thanks very much, Suhana. Firstly, I want to say, I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and listen to whatever I'm going to say tonight. I do these things for many reasons, one of which is a selfish one, purely because sessions like these reward me. They fill my spirits, they fill my soul, because I equally get inspired when I interact with a different generation. So thanks, guys. I'm Ume, MD of Joe Public Connect. That's the digital specialist agency of the Joe Public United Group. And a piece of advice I would have told myself at 20, which is exactly 20 years ago. I was doing my final year bachelor's degree. You know, I would have told myself not to worry about wanting to be the thinnest, the coolest, or the most popular kid at university, because in your 40s, those things don't matter. Other more important things start to matter in life, like kindness, like thoughtfulness and selflessness. But also, I'd say be present, take everything in, because there's a big sense of a life well lived when you start to remember the memories of years gone by. So that's what I would have told myself back then.
Great stuff. Thank you. And we're going to now move on to Camilla.
Right. Hey, guys. Thanks for having me here, firstly. I'm ECD of an agency in Cape Town called Hello FCB with a little silent plus at the end. I've been in the industry now for about 10 years, and it's been 10 years of huge growth. I've made a hell of a lot of mistakes. And I guess the positive of that is that I learned a lot from those mistakes. So when the guy said that I should give some advice, I actually took it like pretty damn seriously and wrote down a bunch of points that I wished I knew when I was a lightie in the industry. So Suhana and Sims, please tell me if I'm going well over time, but I think all of these are invaluable. So the first one is, it's absolutely okay to be wrong. I think as females, we put a huge amount of pressure on ourselves to always be right, to nail the brief, to nail the meeting. And, you know, I think for some reason we feel like we're always sort of starting on the back foot. But the thing is, it's okay to be wrong, because that's how you learn. And that's how you start to develop your own sort of unique approaches and opinions. The second one, and it's still one that I haven't quite learned, don't drink too much at office parties. For some reason, the pictures will haunt you for the rest of your career. It doesn't matter what you do, they'll follow you around. The next point is a great piece of advice I was actually given when I was starting in the industry, and it's just have a voice. So it's particularly scary to speak up, but you've got to get used to hearing yourself in sort of public spaces. So even if it's just chatting to someone in a queue, or speaking out loud in a forum like this, you know, it never feels comfortable, but the more you hear your own voice and the more you take up space, the more noticed you get in this industry, and the more confidence you have. Then another point is work hard, but take care of yourself. I think something I especially have struggled with is this continuous guilty feeling, like I'm never doing enough, or how could I take that sick day, even if I'm sort of sitting on the loo solidly for 24 hours. But it's actually important and okay to look after yourself, and yes, push yourself, but not to the point of breaking. Then be vulnerable. So it's actually okay to feel, and to share those feelings with others. I personally think it's not a sign of weakness at all, but actually of strength. And I've found in my career, when I have been open and vulnerable, I've built better and stronger relationships with people around me and with clients. And lastly, and this for me is paramount, just be yourself. I think especially as women in the industry, we've spent a lot of our time trying to mirror sort of behaviors we've seen around us. Not only is it inauthentic and people can read that, but you become a bit of an imposter in your own body because you're not who you truly are. So just be you. I mean, you exist for a purpose. You've got a lot to share, and that's ultimately what people want to see. not you trying to mirror someone else. So yeah, your difference is your superpower. That's it for me.
Thanks, Camilla. I totally relate to the guilt one a lot. Very much still. Okay, moving on to Khabiseng, please. It's your turn.
Hi everyone, I'm Khabiseng. As Suhana said in her introduction, I'm a co-founder and chief creative officer at Think Creative Africa. Actually, similarly to you, Camilla, I started working 10 years ago. So it's been like a solid decade for me working in the industry, and you know, it's flown by. When I actually thought about it the other day, because Facebook served me one of those weird memories that it does, I just couldn't believe that the 10 years had passed that quickly. So I guess as a segue into some advice I'd give myself is to really just slow down. I know a lot of us women who are in the industry, we're very ambitious. We're like type A personalities. We're like trying to get our ducks in a row as soon as possible. And we just do not stop to smell the roses. So in the last 10 years, from chasing one deadline to the next deadline, or chasing one goal to the next goal, I feel like the whole 10 years has flown by without me stopping to, for instance, celebrate a moment where I've done well, or stopping to look around and see who needs my help, or stopping to encourage somebody else. And I think that has been the tonality of the industry. So when's your next Lurie? When's your next ad? When's your next this, that? Actually, when I worked at FCB long ago, we used to sing and taunt each other in the creative department, and we'd go, where's your ad at? Where's your ad at? And it was just like the worst feeling that would come over me, you know, thinking, where's my next ad? And I think the importance of slowing down and reflecting allows you to take in how much growth you've had. And why I think that's important is because I also know a lot of us suffer from imposter syndrome. So I think because of the pace at which we're always going to achieve the next thing and not stopping to go, hey, hang on, I achieved this, I've achieved that, I've achieved this, I've helped this person, I've shown that one kindness, I've grown this account, you know, all of those positive reinforcements that you need from pausing and looking don't sink in. And then when you are told you are this wonderful woman who's going to be promoted or celebrated, you're like, no, I'm not. Because indeed, you did not take the time to look at each milestone and internalize it. So there's a song, I think it's Billy Joel, and it always plays in my head when I start doing that, where he says, slow down, you crazy child. And it's like, it's my little alarm that gives myself, you know, a moment to go, wait, you know, you've done something amazing here, take it in. And if you take it in, you build yourself up, you build your confidence, because each milestone has come with a landing and an internalization that allows you not to feel out of place, not to feel like the BEE hire, or not to feel underqualified for that award. So I think I've only brought that one thought to share with you because I felt like I wish someone would have shared that with me when I was 20 years old. It's really important to stop and reflect.
That's so true. I think that, you know, time in advertising, literally it goes like this. And I think when we look at our faces as well, like, I don't think people actually get old. When you're in advertising, people don't age like so quickly. Like, you know, creative people are always young at heart, young in soul, young in energy, and so much energy as well that time just goes. Like 10 years, I mean, like Camilla, like, we know where we were 10 years ago. And those office parties and those pictures that are haunting us, we know exactly where we were 10 years ago. And like, you look at those pictures and, you know, as you were saying about, you know, Facebook reminding you, like, if you look at those pictures, we all look pretty ashy compared to now. I'm looking at everybody's faces and I'm like, maybe we use the right amount of Vaseline now, or, you know, we've earned a little bit more in one sense to get Elizabeth Arden facial creams. But the one thing that is, it's very important is to think about these things. And as you're saying, like reflecting about time and pausing and just looking at what you've achieved, because as all three of you as influential women are sitting on this panel, you know, there's a reason why, you know, our mentees are here to ask questions. These are young women who are looking towards you, looking up towards you, looking at your achievements, looking at what you've done, but they also finding themselves thinking, oh my gosh, you know, I want to do this, I don't know where to go. And I think this is the importance as to why we have these sessions, so that we can always make sure that there is, even though it's just 2 minutes of your time, it's a valuable 2 minutes. So I think with that, I'll explain just how the evening is going to go. So our beautiful mentees, I hope you have all your questions, and don't hate me because, you know, I'm going to remind you that you don't have enough time, but don't rush through things either. So consider your questions well. So each mentee will have a session. So we'll call out the first one, and then she will then ask 2 questions per mentor, and then go to the next one, ask 2 questions, and the next one, and that basically would be their sessions. But everybody will be staying throughout the entire event. So with that, in random order, we'll ask Tulu to now come through. Tulu is actually there on screen. Tulu, can you ask?
Okay. Hi.
Tulu's.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. There's a bit of feedback, so I'm not sure if.
Simone,
Yebo?
can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Okay, cool. So I'm not sure if I'm the only person.
Can you hear me now?
No, there is a bit of feedback.
So what I'll do is, Tulu, you might need to call back again so that we don't have feedback.
Yeah, I think we can maybe start with someone else while Tulu calls back in. Padesh?
Can you hear me?
No.
Still some issues.
Not sure. Okay, cool. So Tulu, let's do this. Let's go on to Gloria. And then I think, Tulu, if you can start, if you could just join us again, but we'll start with Gloria.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Gloria.
Okay, cool.
So, can I go ahead?
Yes, you may.
Okay. My first question, it's with Mpume. It's what do you think the future of traditional advertising is, especially after this pandemic?
Okay. I think traditional advertising is not dead. In fact, it's only the beginning in the context of our country. Because we know 80% of the population is Black. They live in areas that are data sensitive. The pockets are data sensitive. And the patterns that we've begun to see during the lockdown and during this pandemic is the rise in traditional media consumption. A lot of people are listening to radio. A lot of people have gone back to watching TV. Also simply because there's now a lot of people that are sitting at home and are unemployed. So I really think that the future of traditional advertising in the context of this country, in the context of this pandemic, is not dying. Secondly, I wouldn't look at traditional advertising as traditional advertising. I would look at ideas as a concept, you know, because those are the things that are most important in our industry. It's ideas and the product that we develop. Where it lives is another story depending on budgets, but I would frame the question to be about ideas, and I think ideas will get us very far in our industry and as ladies.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is, how important is popularity in our industry?
Popularity?
Like, I've noticed like the people that I know who are popular in the industry somehow seem to be the people that are doing well.
So I would say
on social media, like just popular. And what if you're naturally a reserved person? I'm not, I'm just asking in a, yeah. How
so
important
you're asking a very reserved person. Popularity. So life is not about popularity. It's not a popularity context. And what's important, at least in my mind, is credibility. And as a person that, you know, is trying to grow in this industry, I would advise that let your craft, let your skill, let your product do the work. Only then will you get popular, because you don't want to get popular for the sake of being popular. Have something. And I think that's what matters, you know, in life, what you're popular for, and not just in a celebrity.
Thank you. And then my next two questions are for Camilla. Hi, Camilla.
Hi there.
I just wanted to know, have you ever had moments where you wanted to quit the industry, and what kept you going?
This morning. No kidding. Look, I think it's not an easy industry. I don't think any industry is. I actually studied to be a chartered accountant, of all things, and just knew that definitely was not for me, the sort of 9 to 5. And found my passion in advertising. I think it's more like finding what you're passionate about within the industry. So my big passion point is solving like business problems. You know, so even though I'm sort of one of the leaders in the studio now, I'm probably at my best when I'm sort of quietly with my partner in a room brainstorming the next sort of unusual thing that's going to come out and hopefully take the ad world by storm. But it isn't always that easy. You're often dealing with different characters, different people, different clients, different ambitions, different goals. I think for me, I tend to take it quite personally when my work is rejected, even though I know they say you shouldn't, but sometimes you do. And if you've really been fighting for a project for a while, you believe in it, you know it's right, and suddenly a client pulls it away from you, that's enough to say opening up a bottle of red wine and quitting. But for me, there's a massive draw card back to the industry, because my passion is sort of firstly coming up with great solutions for problems, and that's always there. And secondly, female empowerment. And I think of all my colleagues and the people you know I work with, and how I'd like to create a safe space for others to thrive. And it keeps me going. But yeah, it's definitely one of those industries where if you don't say you want to quit sort of once or twice a year, there is something wrong with you.
Okay, I think my second question was regarding the female empowerment. How would you say as women we can empower each other in this industry? How do you think we can make the platform broader?
I think, you know, it's an interesting question. I think for me personally, growing up in the industry, it was a very male-dominated industry. I saw a lot of, and again, I'm just talking from my own sort of personal experience, but a lot of females almost taking on their male counterparts' sort of behavior and their leadership styles, and it didn't feel very inviting for other women. I think it's important for us to bring other females up the ladder, to form groups like this where we can support one another, and to shine sort of a different lens on advertising, where it doesn't have to be what it was, and there's definitely room for a whole new way of doing things. Which is why I brought up sort of key learnings, like it's all right to be vulnerable. It's fine to admit that you're wrong. It's all right to take a day off work because you've got shocking period pain, and I think as long as we have that support and we stand behind one another, then there's absolutely no reason why women should feel excluded. I think a lot about this industry is sort of a sense of belonging. And I think for many years, I didn't feel that sense of belonging. I felt almost like an intruder. The more we create a space that makes females really feel like they belong, the more people are naturally going to be drawn to it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hi, Khabiseng.
Sorry, my mute speed, unmuting speed. Hi.
You spoke about, I had a question for you, and it ties to you talking about we should slow down. I wanted to ask how do you learn early to strike a balance? Like, what would you say to you?
Yeah, such an interesting question. So look, balance is a tricky one for me. And if I'm going to be honest, I don't even know if I've learned it now, I think it's a symptom of my personality, but for me, so I was chatting to someone, just to give you a context, and they were like, "Oh, aren't you like stressed with the workload, blah blah blah?" And I was just like, "I'm stressed when I don't have that workload, actually." So I'm happiest sitting somewhere doing work, rather than other scenarios often. So I think we all need to define what balance is for ourselves. So for me, sometimes being in, like, let's say you send me to a family gathering in Mpumalanga, where I'm from, might be super stressful, but sitting around making ads isn't. So one, you need to define what's creating an imbalance for you. And for me, work doesn't necessarily create an imbalance for me. But other than that, I think taking care of yourself is super important, because I've learned over time that your body will just say no at a certain point, and it won't be a nice scenario usually, and it won't be well timed either. So getting some physical rest, getting out to see inspiring things, chatting to people is super important, even for the kind of work you make. So from that perspective, I would say monitor yourself, so you can tell when you're starting to not like the ads you're making, or not like the work that's coming out, or the scenario under which you're making it, and that might be a hint that something is out of whack for you, and give yourself permission to just take that time out, or have a rest. But full disclosure, I'm definitely not the mentor to ask about balance. I haven't fully cracked it yet. I'm definitely still learning.
Thank you. And my second question is, I would assume when you started a journey into finding think creative, you had a certain vision, or you wanted to create a certain lane, or do you feel like you are doing exactly that, or do you feel that it shifted? If it shifted, how do you think it shifted? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, such amazing questions. Okay, well, I definitely think there are bits that have shifted. I always say that it feels like we're running a different business each year, and that's just because your business has to respond to the times and what the market needs are and where the gaps are. So where we started out, we wanted to do just work for good, so cause work only. And we quickly discovered, number one, there isn't a huge market in terms of companies that can afford to do work that's based in causes that are making money themselves. So it kind of felt like we were a solution looking for a problem. And we had to really kind of ask ourselves, are we needed where we are busy trying, to plant ourselves? And when the answer is no, we kind of like tweak slightly, but try and keep the core of what we're doing still there. So if we can't do work for social change solely, then can we inject something interesting that can either do the social change thing from a communication perspective, make work that actually answers to how we wanted the business to be in the first place. So it's a lot of concessions. And I think at the size of business that we are, a lot of where we go is led by the clients that we're able to interact with. So what access to what pipeline do we have? And then make the most of that. Which coming into this, I think we really believed we would like step out and then there'd be like hordes of clients like flying at us and like so much work that we'd be, nitpicking it, which obviously is not the case. But I think what we have tried to do is be true to the kind of company we've wanted to be from the start. And sometimes that does mean saying no to certain projects, which has been super, super difficult. But keeping the vision alive, which you have to like remind yourself to reignite every few months. So yeah, there's been some shifts. There's been some things we've held on to, which I think are really important. But a lot of it is just being responsive and trying to be relevant within the time and for the clients that we have access to.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you for the questions.
Ooh. I think I can possibly help you with the balance answer. On your paycheck, there's a beautiful line that says leave days. So just look at leave days and respect it, because none of us respected leave days. So to the youngins, respect your leave days, unless you've got a mission to leave the company and you're trying to cash out, then it's a savings plan, but respect your leave days no matter what. Sibu, are you ready for us?
Yes, I am.
Perfect, you're up.
Cool. So my first question is to Mpumi. And I read somewhere you mentioned that being a leader is not about serving yourself, but it's about serving others. So I'd like to know how do you achieve that on a daily basis, on a regular day at work?
So it actually begins with the sense of wanting to be excellent and reaching one's own target, so that you don't compare yourself to others, but you compare yourself to yourself. Making sure that you tick the things that you want to tick, and seeing yourself grow. And with seeing yourself grow, other people see you growing. So that's what I meant about, inspiring others, being selfless, because being true to yourself is a selfless thing. So that's what I meant.
Awesome. That's amazing. And then my other question is, Gloria mentioned something about being popular in the industry and that being a recipe for success, right? And I've noticed that, brands tend to use the same influencers and it gets, a little tired. Do you think it's maybe laziness from the side of advertising agencies, or do you think that like influencer marketing is really effective?
So there's two answers to your question. The one about being ad agencies being lazy. So my belief is that the comms out there, there is no self-respecting creative person that wakes up and develops wallpaper work. I feel like as creative people, we're forced into a corner, more often than we'd like, to produce work that we're not proud of. So it's not a matter of being lazy, it's a matter of the context and the parameters that we work within.
I see. Or basically blind pushing for a certain influencer.
On the laziness.
I
don't
okay.
think we're lazy. Because remember, creativity is about passion. I don't think there's a self-respecting creative person that would want to produce work that is deemed to be lazy. I have to be defensive there.
Yeah.
On influencer marketing, I think the biggest issue has got to do with maybe, lack of brand positioning and lack of clarity of the brand, so that, if there's lack of clarity, lack of purpose, then you tend to go for whatever is available, whatever is the most famous, things that don't mean anything, things that are not of substance. I think that is the biggest cause of what you're seeing about influencers duplication and whatnot, is because of lack of brand clarity and brand purpose.
Fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And then my next question is to Camilla. So Camilla, I would like to know, what is a recipe for a can lion?
Tell me. Look, there is absolutely no real recipe for a can lion or a one show or a DNAD. I have to say, I've entered some work in the past where I've sort of imagined myself walking up to stage in a great dress, and it hasn't even received a finalist. So, I think there are certain things that one can look at in order to make sure your work has the best chance. The first thing is relevance and context. So how have you explained it, and how have you packaged it? I myself get cold shivers when I think of putting together case studies, but they are one of the most important things you can do, because a case study, that 2 minutes, that sells in your work. And if you can't explain the context to South Africa, then the judges won't understand it. The next is technologies. So what interesting technologies are you using to make your work come to life? How have you hacked some little mobile application or something like that? I think for many years it was, almost the haute couture of advertising, but now results do matter. So what is your reach like? How have people responded to it? Basically, if it's not a piece of work that works, it's not going to be awarded. I think here in South Africa especially, we have trouble PRing our work like they do internationally. So it is difficult for our sort of smaller projects to get a big name overseas. And, last but not least, the idea, is it novel? Is it fresh? Has it not been done before? Is there just nothing like it that you can compare it to, even in the last 5 years? And then you just got to hope and pray that you've got a great panel sitting there who's going to take your work in the right way and fight for it. I've been on a couple of jury panels around the world, and I have to say I've seen pieces that have been loved shot down because one person on that panel isn't a fan. And it's just such is life. So that's why I've realized now that I can't base how good I am by the awards industry, let's say, because it can be a bit of a shock to the system, but it is worth fighting for. But yeah, there's no recipe, absolutely not. Otherwise, I'd be following it.
Right, thank you so much for that. And the next question that I have for you is, what advice would you give to someone who's had a late start in the industry? Like, yeah, how does one navigate the industry? Yeah, if they've started late.
Okay, so I mean, I can tell you what I did in order to sort of fast track my career a bit. So I got into it quite late. So I finished studying when I was about 26. And I made a big point of getting to know the industry pretty well. I understood the big companies, what they were about, what their purpose was. And then I looked for the people who I really wanted to work with and who inspired me. And then I rattled off to Johannesburg to work with this guy who was like the absolute maverick slash asshole slash genius of the industry at the time. And put my head down and put in the hours, in all honesty. You know, I was the last one there trying to do the radio scripts. I would try and weasel my way into a whole lot of different jobs, even if other teams were on it, to understand it better. And it was, yeah, a lot of persistence. There are no easy, quick wins in this industry. That's why I do laugh at the popularity thing, because I have to say, I don't know anyone who's done incredibly well in this industry by chance or just because they're popular. It's putting in the time. The 10,000 hours. You just got to do it quicker.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Javi, I was so excited to see your face on the panel. Yeah, I really, really admire your work. And the question that I have for you is, you know, I'm an introvert, and sometimes I find myself like struggling to get a word in a meeting. So have you worked with introverts before, and how do you ensure that they perform at their optimal best? If you've been in a situation like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fabulous question, and we are like an industry that praises extrovertedness, and sometimes to our own detriment. But for me, thankfully, I've had like years of learning, because my business partner Mugondi is quite an introvert, and I think what working in a team with someone like that has taught me is not to be there for the batter, you know, I'm going to use a fish analogy, but rather to be there for the fish. When someone says, this is all batter, no fish, at least they say that in the Caribbean. I think I've learned to really listen to the substance of what someone is saying rather than the showmanship with which they say it. And I think a lot of the time when you do that, you're able to see some people use their extrovertedness as a cover-up, so as not to have, as Camilla says, that 10,000 hours or that attention to detail. And working with someone who has very few words, but when they do offer something up is very meaningful, has been like a great training ground for me, being an extrovert myself, to know what to look for when I'm working with people in a team. And a lot of the time it's, as the person that's the leader in the room's responsibility to ask the people that aren't saying anything for comment. I used to work with somebody who used to listen to all the noise, and then he would point out one person and he would say, Mukondi, what do you think? And that a lot of the time would add something so interesting to the conversation, because us extroverts, we run away with the fun and like jokes and good times, and a lot of the substance is lost, you know, in our theatrics. So a thing that I've learned is to actually actively monitor how everyone is participating in the room. And if I see that someone is not saying anything, to ask. It also helps to use your extrovertedness or a loud voice that can project to go, I think Sibu wanted to say something, by looking at people's body language. and being that person because you are, you know, loud and audible to say, hang on guys, I think she wanted to say something, or just repeating what the introverted person said sometimes has worked a lot for me in the past. So I'll go, guys, did you hear what Sibu said? She said this. And then suddenly people are like, oh, that's amazing. It's like she's been saying it 3 times. So I think looking around the room and being aware of body language and being aware who are the loudest people, who are the quietest people, it's just an awareness that we should all learn over time if we want to be in positions of leadership, because everyone has something meaningful to offer. I've learned over the years. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I love what you mentioned about, you know, like checking in with everyone in the room, you know, to see if they would like to say something. Which brings me to my next question. Have you ever had an idea dismissed or like completely rejected? And, you know, like how did you handle that? Did you recycle the idea or did you just like throw it away? Rejected idea, it's not going to work. Let's move on.
I mean, it's like day in the life, hey? It's like advertising 101 every single day. Something I believe in is like being rejected or undermined or reframed incorrectly or broken telephone. And it's just an ongoing battle. Like when I used to work with Brett Morris, he used to talk about, I love football as well. So he used to talk about 50-50 balls. And 50-50 balls is about possession of the match. And if you keep losing the 50-50 balls, ultimately, statistically, you're likely to lose the match. And I learned to just build up a stamina to win those 50-50 balls. Like you have to keep going back, you know. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, I have had ideas rejected all the time. Sometimes it's because the idea is not really right for that moment or that brand or that creative director. And sometimes you have to concede. So I think I usually will push until I can see it's not going to make it here, but I'll try and keep it alive in some form or another. So there has been like quite a bit of can that idea work here on my part if I really believe in it. But also sometimes like just being humble and going, let me hear why this person is saying this idea is not 100% right to this. Because sometimes someone is rejecting an idea because it's half-baked or I haven't articulated it well enough. So I haven't given them an insight that I have about why this thing is so great. Or, you know, there could be a number of reasons. And through like really listening over the years and going, you know, I have something to learn from the people that have done more than me. I've been able to go and refine ideas that have been rejected into things that are approved. But I think we talk about a thick skin, and I don't think it's 100% right. Like if you believe in your ideas, you know, I think it should hurt a little bit. You know, you should feel the pain of being alive and putting something out, and that helps with growth as well. It helps you to be able to stand up for your ideas in future if you feel like you weren't really standing up for them previously, or to be able to go back and refine them and show that you believe in them. Because every time I've presented an idea with my heart on my sleeve and it's been successful, there really is nothing like that, like a kind of euphoria that you feel. So I've just learned over time to just expect rejection from time to time and be okay with it. Just asking myself, this person doesn't want this idea. What can I do about that in the scenario? If there's nothing I can do, how can I, you know, continue the life of this idea beyond this moment?
Great. Thank you so much, Khabi. That's all the questions from my side.
Awesome. Thanks.
So we're running very thin on time. So we just have to kind of, like we're just realizing that we literally only have like 40 minutes left. We still have a few. It's such a great thing. Like you can't stop everybody. Like, so let's just be mindful about time. So Pumzile, if you can pull through and ask your questions.
Yes, okay. Hi everyone. So my first question will be with Nkhabiseng again. My first question is, if you had to design the creative of the future, how would you go about it? So how would they look? How would they behave? What look or feel does the creative of the future give you?
It's a fun question, I guess. Yeah, I'd make them look as science fiction as possible, but being realistic, I think that even the current creative for me isn't necessarily a look. I want to say something controversial, and I hope it doesn't like offend anyone, but I think over time I've picked up that like people that look like hectic creatives hardly ever are the people that put out the amazing work. It seems to me that all the time they've invested in like looking creative and like the ambassador of like Arts on Main isn't time they would have spent refining a script or refining an idea. So I know, like, you know, creative people can look in, you know, literally like, you know, absolutely anything. There are people that look like the typical idea of an accountant who I've like, you know, learned so much from and who are super awarded and who make like amazing work. So I think there definitely isn't a look, and I'm really, really excited that that thing will descend even more, you know, because I think if you walked into a creative department, you know, 10, 20 years ago, you weren't going to look at someone like me and be like, that person is a creative. You might have like put me in wherever, client service or whatever. I just think the work needs to speak for the person. And I'm becoming less and less interested in like the look, you know, of someone, and that being the thing that tells you that they're a creative. But yeah, if I had to make a sketch, I would put lots of antennas on them, feelers.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that. That was a cool answer. And then my next question is a two-part question. So first part is, what do you think the South African film and advertising industry is lacking at the moment, especially creatively, and what needs to be done to fill those gaps?
I just feel
frozen.
Okay, I can see you.
Am I?
Nkhabiseng, I think there's a delay. I don't know if I'm the only one who's seeing that.
Nope, there is.
Okay.
Maybe the question was
Am
too
I
hard.
at least audible?
It's getting better. Still a slight delay. I think she has, oh, there she's back.
Hi guys, sorry about that. Am I audible now?
Yes, we can hear you
Okay,
now.
perfect. Kumzila, I think your question broke my internet. But what I wanted to say was, for me, it's quite obvious. Like, the more diverse an industry we become, the better. I think that the minds of women are like lacking. We're still a very male industry, and we still don't have enough people of color in the places where they can influence creative. So I definitely think it's lacking in diversity. I know it's an obvious answer, but I think it's a really important one, because that could definitely change the tone and the tune of the industry, as well as its ultimate direction. I hope you heard that. I felt like I cut a bit.
Yes, that was clear. That was clear. Thank you so much.
Okay. Boom. Do you want to ask your next question?
Yes, okay. So my next question would be for, let me see, for Camilla. So this one is about buzz terms and buzzwords. So creative disruption is becoming one of those buzz terms. And I'd just like to know from Camilla, how would you define it in your own words? And then my second question after that would be, do you think it's a necessary ideology in terms of the African creative space right now?
What was the term you used again?
Oh, creative disruption, creative disruption.
So I have to say, for me personally, buzzwords are my pet hate. When we devised this concept agency, Hello FCB, we made sure that in everything we do and say, we are devoid of any buzzword, because firstly, no one truly understands it. Secondly, everyone has a slightly different description of what it is and what it does. And I think it just leads to even more confusion in advertising than usual. So, so I personally don't take any notice of buzzwords, and I refuse to use them in any presentation I do to any client. So I take no notice of them. I mean, that obviously doesn't answer your question really, but but I just think that they're far too vague.
Right, right. Okay. No, that's clear enough. That's clear enough. Thank you. And so since the second part fell under the first question, I'll ask you a different question. So you spoke, there was a discussion about ideas and basically how well they're accepted or how well people take them. And I think you even made one example with one of the panels you were on. So in terms of the unspoken language of creative standards in the industry, how do you know when a project is supposedly creative or artistic enough to either become commercial or just for some type of viability in terms of the industry standards?
I mean, we obviously have a lot of barriers as creatives, and barriers which we have to work within. So firstly, anything we're producing, we are producing for a client, unless it is a proactive piece. So it has to work for the client. It has to follow their brand purpose. It has to work within their CI. It would be unrealistic of us to expect that clients would be happy to veer off everything that they've done in order to grow the brand and grow awareness of it. So for me, the perfect idea is something that comes from a very sort of contextual and relevant insight that really speaks bang on to the audience that that they're trying to approach, and then you can bring it to life within the brand constructs that just make it out of this world. And the thing is, you know, when you've done it, you've got a gut feel, you 100% know if it's something that's worth fighting for, worth pushing with client. And quite frankly, a lot of the time, client knows that it's the right thing to do as well. You know, sometimes, you know, they do push back because, you know, budget realities and other things get in the way. But on the whole, when you find a piece of work like that, you know it's worth fighting for, you know it's going to do good by the brand, and ultimately the results should display that as well. So I'm not one of those creatives that believes the project in itself is so creative and artistic that it must go out there if it doesn't work for the client and work for the brand. So I think when you find that perfect middle mark, that's when you're onto a winner.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Cool, thank you.
All right. Hi, Bume. My first question for you would be, what are some fundamental truths or things that you've learned about mastering how to excel in the business of creativity?
I would definitely say, stay the course. I would say it's very important to learn your craft. It's very important to understand your skill. It's very important to learn the ropes, because with that, then you begin to build your network. You begin to build your value. That would be my short answer. Oh, and lastly, it takes time to build value. So don't rush it. Just take the time and be patient, because with patience comes the gift of time. Time to learn the ropes, time to perfect your craft.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. And then my second question is loosely based on one of the answers that you gave us about influencer marketing. What's the biggest challenge in finding and nurturing a brand's personality for you?
In nurturing a brand's personality?
Yes.
Right. There's probably a strategic question that requires a strategic answer, and it's all based on the role of the brand, what role the brand plays in society, the reason for its existence, why the consumers need to consume it instead of the other brands. What are the insights that you can find out or establish, so that you give the brand meaning, you give the brand, you justify why it needs to play a role in society. So that would be how to go about developing a brand personality and a brand positioning.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cool. Tracy, you clearly did super high grade mathematics. Yeah. Time. Kana, you next?
Oh, hi everyone. My first question is for Bume. Sorry to start with you. I'm just going with the original order. How do you decide or know you're ready to take a career-changing leap? So knowing you have big shoes to fill, as you were when you were being appointed MD, how do you know if you taking on a senior role, you will thrive in that role, or if it's too soon for you to take that leap? And I guess this talks to what Khabiseng was talking about earlier with regards to imposter syndrome, but also a little bit of how do you know when you're a little bit underqualified and, for a role?
I think you know. My belief is that a person is due for a promotion when they can't learn any more in their current role. That's when they're ready for a promotion. The new position, you always fumble, you always, carry the anxiety, but you need to understand that you are in that position because you've earned it. So a short answer is when you're ready and when you're not.
Okay, cool, thank you. And then my next question is, so towards the end of the year last year, we all heard that Accenture bought Droga 5. And do you think agencies are moving within the consultancy space? And then do you also think it would be a good move, especially for someone in strategy or AM, to move within the McKinseys, the Deloittes, to better position yourself for the future that everyone is anticipating will be within the consultancy spaces?
So I don't know about the future being in the consultancy spaces. I think the partnership or the consultancies buying advertising agencies is because they recognize the fact that advertising agencies deliver something that they don't have and never will have. The reason why advertising agencies buy into the consultancies is because consultancies play a different role that advertising agencies cannot play. Whether the future lies there, I don't think so. It is a different strategy that advertising agencies are taking. It's a different direction. And my assumption is it's a growth strategy that they're taking. It's a passion point. I mean, working for an advertising agency is a passion point. And it's up to each individual whether they want to, branch off to being a consultant and focus on data and technology. It's an individual choice. And there's no right or wrong in that regard. It really is about a person's journey and a person's preference.
Okay, cool, thank you. My next question is for Nkhabiseng. Think back to 5 years ago, or before you actually started your business. Did you envision your career to where it is today? And what actionable steps did you start taking to ensure that you got here?
Tough question, yeah. 5 years ago. So our business is 4 years old. So 5 years ago is when I was still working full time. Geez, I think the one thing I personally really struggled with is actually putting into place the plan I had in my mind for so long. So going and talking about it all the time with my partner and going, this is what we should do, this would be so great, and like doing that for a long time and struggling to like take that leap and go, okay, how are we gonna get this thing going? Because a business sounds so big, and it was definitely an intimidating idea for me. But I knew that I wanted to try it. So I think what helped in terms of actionable steps is to break it down into smaller chunks. So not go, I'm gonna start this magnificent business that's going to be inclusive and lucrative and blah, blah, blah. That was scary. So we went, how about we freelance as a team for a few months, and making that the first step. And then going, if we freelance for a few months, how about we dedicate a percentage of our income from freelance to starting this business? And then doing that for a few months, and then going, wow, we've got the income, getting a bit of confidence from that, and then going, how about we put up a website? So like breaking it up into step 1, step 2, step 3, and only worrying about that step. So in the first year of our business, at a time, we were only ever worried about, do we have a website? Who's going to be our first client? Do we need business cards? We worried ourselves around the actionable things that we can actually control, and kept the vision, I think, in our minds and our hearts, because a lot of the time it can be the thing that throttles you. Because if you look at your business in month 3 of year 1, it's definitely going to be nowhere near your vision. And reflecting in that moment might make you feel like you're not doing the thing you set out to do, whereas you are still in the process of getting to that place. So I think from a practical perspective, making the goals very short term helps to take out the fear of how big it can feel to start a business, and then using each milestone as a booster of confidence. Like, look, we actually did get one client. We actually did put out a piece of work. We actually did get some press. And then going, all of these things are cues for the credibility of our original idea. And yes, we can still stay the course. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Eating the elephant chunk by chunk, basically.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you for that. And then my second question is a little bit of a build from what Gloria asked. Obviously, we're living through uncharted waters with the COVID-19 pandemic, and so many industries have changed and evolved during this time. Where do you see the future of advertising going, and what do you think young people can start doing to gear themselves up to make sure that they are employable in this future?
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting. Actually, I was looking at the statistics of various careers' longevity within the fourth industrial revolution. And it felt to me like we're in one of the careers which will survive changes in technology, changes in structure, changes in environment. As you know, most of us are working from home. And it was interesting that the thing that we basically do is come up with ideas and solve problems. And I think that as a skill set can take us into any change that the future might bring. And if I think we keep our core around generating ideas and solving problems, then we can be very malleable and fit into whatever future scenarios might present. In our agency specifically, we had been working in quite a fluid way for quite some time. So people were always able to sit at the office, sit at a gallery, sit at home, come together. And we kind of had that scenario because we were such a small team. It felt crazy to like micromanage everyone and expect them in the same room all the time. And building up that rapport of working together from different places has actually helped us quite a lot in this scenario. So our focus has always been, how do our ideas solve problems? How do our ideas drive change? And I think that's something that advertising as an industry can take into any manner of future, to be honest. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm being told to speed it up. So Camilla, my question for you is, how do you better position yourself in the industry to become a future leader? Strategically actually working to make sure that you work in one of the leading agencies in the country and become a leader in it?
I think it's important to put your name out there. I think you've got to spend time trying to develop your own sort of strategies and thought processes that are slightly left field, and you must talk about it. I think just putting yourself into sort of forums like this already get one the kind of exposure that one needs in order to climb the ladder a bit. But I definitely think it is about formulating different and new and fresh opinions and finding your own way of doing things that ultimately is showcased, and that's how you build up to the top. No one gets anywhere by just being the same.
Okay, thank you for that. And then my last question is, can you tell us about a time when you had a difficult boss and how did you handle the situation?
So, I mean, I wish we had another hour and a half. But no, I mean, you do get difficult bosses. I think I've, in my career, had a bunch of difficult bosses who, at the same time have also been great bosses and taught me a huge amount. I think what I believed back in the day was a difficult boss, I feel very differently about now. So a difficult boss for me then was someone who pushed me too hard, made me work after hours, would continuously challenge me, sometimes to the point of sort of mild breakdown. But now I'm only too thankful for that. Obviously, I'm in a very different position now where I can have very open and honest conversations with my boss, but I wish that I had done that sooner. I wish I'd had the guts to be able to sit in front of someone and say, we're both human here. This is how I'm feeling. Let's have a conversation about it. So I think the best way is openness and honesty. And even if it creates a huge amount of discomfort, which it will, have the conversation. I personally prefer to go straight to the root rather than go the HR way. because I think you can iron out a lot of issues and discomforts just by face-to-face having a chat. And I do think, though, anytime it's happened with me, because sometimes I apparently can be an irritating boss, I feel very grateful for being given the chance to have that conversation with my employees. And I actually respect them a lot more for it.
Cool. Thank you so much.
But after this, I can give you a list of people not to work with if you want. I'm kidding.
Great.
No, I'm totally kidding. No, a lot of great people out there.
Cool. Sulu, you're up.
Yes. My first question is to Camilla. So, Camilla, as a female creator who's passionate about carving a space for female leaders, would you say the industry is ready for different leadership styles from females and the different perspectives that will bring?
I 100% think that the industry, I don't think the industry is ready for it. I think it's happening. I think it has taken a few females to really sort of push the agenda, but I think now there's absolutely no excuse. And there's no reason why female leadership styles, well, actually, I don't even want to call it male and female leadership styles. I think everyone personally has a different way of sort of gaining sort of control of the situation. And I think everyone should be allowed to do it in a way that is authentic to them. I mean, I think with my creative team, for example, I don't want to dictate how someone does a presentation. You must present to a client in a way that feels comfortable for you. And I feel the same about leadership. And I definitely think at the beginning of my career, there was a lot of cookie cutter leadership and bosses, and there was sort of one way in which to do it. But I've been quite lucky in my career to see a lot of very sort of strong individuals come forward with totally different ways of doing things. And now's the time, if ever. You've got to be a different kind of leader to get through this COVID period where you're not sitting in front of someone and have that sort of personable moment. So yeah, I think it's already happening.
Thank you for that. And with the world constantly moving digitally, do you think we stand a chance to experience the loss of the true human connections we hold as a people, as human beings? Because now everything is online, especially now with the ongoing pandemic. Do you think after all of this, yes, much as digital will still be running space, do we still have a chance to connect truly as humans?
Interesting question. I have to say I didn't hear the whole thing, so I'm just going to take sort of the bits I grabbed, which I would sort of summarize as with everything moving digitally, how are we going to form real human connections?
Yes.
I think it's an interesting question. I think you know, it's something that we've struggled with as an industry. You know, I think we've for a long time believed a real human connection is made when you're having like a proper sort of one-on-one or group interaction with someone. But I actually think it comes down to sort of real relevant insights and ideas that connect with people in different ways. And I have to say, I've been emotionally touched by a piece of digital work as much as I have a real life sort of companionship or a TV ad. I just think it's how you do it. And it all comes down to great storytelling. So if you speak to people in their language in a way that really forms a connection, it doesn't matter what channel you're on or how much media money you've paid or how big your budget is, it should have a moment of connection right there. So, you know, I wouldn't say we're losing human connection at all. I would say it's becoming difficult to connect with people in ways that are truly different because there's so much noise and so much clutter out there. How are you going to break through? But you know, somehow great brands are still doing it. So I'm a digital fundi myself. So now I believe that I follow some people on Instagram as if they were my lovers and they don't know me. So I think it is possible.
Thank you very much. My next question is to Nkhabiseng. So you are a Black woman, so you are a creative entrepreneur in an industry that is now only adjusting and prioritizing the presence and the opinions of women. What are the biggest lessons that you've learned, firstly, in your creative career, and secondly, in your entrepreneurial journey?
Sure, very deep question for me. I think I've learned, okay, number one, I've learned that as much as we may get tired as the Black women, the women of color in advertising, of carrying the yoke of transformation, we just have to do it. We have to not get tired. We have to re-energize ourselves and re-energize each other, because the fact that we are here is the only way that will motivate for more of us to be here. And I think a lot of the time it can feel like, why do we always have to be the ones who are, pulling the whole thing along? But it's just the way that it is. It's part of our purpose. Every generation has its purpose. I think our generation's purpose is to drive inclusivity in a way that hasn't been driven before. And I think if we can just make each other kind of stay accountable, stay energized, and stay the course of driving inclusivity, whether it's bringing another Black woman on, always suggesting women of color, always bringing on that person that wouldn't have been heard in the room. It's just our job. There's nothing else that is going to make it happen. It has been the responsibility of men for so long, because they had the power and they had the influence, and not very much has happened. I've chatted to women who've been in the industry for like 30 years, and they were facing similar issues that I was facing when I came into the industry. So that just says, this is a woman's job. We need to do it. So I always have to remind myself from an emotional perspective, like, to stop getting tired and stop getting annoyed with the job of transformation, and just stay the course. The other thing I've learned is, I don't know if this is controversial, but I'm going to try and say it anyway, but I think that racism can be super, super distracting. And I first heard that as an idea, I think it was Oprah Winfrey. I really resented it when she said that, because I felt like if you say racism is a distraction, you're not acknowledging the pain and you're not acknowledging the strife, and you're acting like it's not happening. But I think over time, specifically in business, I've started to see that it is a distraction, and it is a powerful distraction. And I think from my perspective, because I already know the truth of how the world works and how our country has worked in the past and how it works today, I acknowledge the presence of racism, and I do what I can, certainly, to change the conversation, to be influential where I can, to use my voice and my finances to drive change. But I think to also keep my mind focused on why I'm in this industry and what the work is that I try to do. I believe, like, if I myself or Mpume or Suhana or any of you that are in the room can be the owner of the most lucrative agency in the business, can be the owner of the most awarded agency in the business, can be at the helm of the most recognized creative department in the business, that the tonality of what is happening in our industry and in our country will change substantially. We have to be in those positions of influence and power. So ultimately, I can see that getting involved with every single argument and every single microaggression is super tempting. But a lot of the time in business, I've had to say to myself, I'm here for this thing. You might be here to be racist. That's your business. I'm here to go about my business today and move my career forward, move my business forward, so that the following day, I've learned something, I've achieved something, I've sold something. And I haven't just left a really painful experience with nothing on top of that. So a lot of the time I've got to adjust my emotions to go, while I see that this person is trying to wield racism to distract me from my growth path, I'm going to let them stay with the racism, and I'm going towards the thing I came here to fetch. And that has been a very painful lesson that was learned in practice. a lot of the time. But I think in the last sort of 2 years, I've caught onto a rhythm that allows me to just move through the BS and achieve what I've come for. Because what that does is it robs you of achieving what you're actually there for. Now you're there addressing someone else's thing. So for me, those were the most powerful learnings, being a Black woman in the industry.
Wow, that is very powerful. Thank you very much for that. I'm gonna move on to you, Sister Mpume. Having a seat on various boards and committees, having worked your way up where you are currently, what would you
women in advertising to aspire to in the industry and in their personal life?
You broke up a bit, so I think, should I tell you your question? Are you asking me what would I tell the women in the industry having said to the various boards?
Yeah. What would you advise any Black female in advertising to aspire to in the industry and in their personal life?
Okay. In terms of aspiration, I think everyone, including women, should set their personal goals, and they should aspire to achieve them. You know, I didn't wake up and sat in the board of the ACA. You know, it's a journey that began a little over 5 years ago, where I started by actually putting my hand up in the industry, volunteering to teach for no salary, but just bursaries, a 4-year diploma and a 4-year degree, which I gave it away to people who needed it. I did that because of my selflessness, but also of my selfishness, because those are the things that reward me personally and reward my soul. So if women or people wanna aspire to be where powerful women are, I think they would need to be selfless and just give and give, because the universe gives back.
Thank you very much, Sister Mpume.
And now we go to Mpumi Juni. No, Mpumi, hello.
Hello. Can everyone hear me? So I'm gonna start with Camilla. So you spoke about having a voice, and as a female leader, how do you make sure that your opinion stays valid and valuable in the room?
Sorry, do you mind if I ask you to repeat that? You just broke up at the beginning.
Oh, sorry. So I said you spoke about having a voice as a creative in the creative space, and how, as a female leader, how do you make sure that your opinion stays valuable and valid at all times?
Look, I think firstly, the point about having a voice is to start to feel quite natural, being able to voice your opinions in the right moments. I think there are a lot of people out there who are quite willing to sort of shout down the house and express themselves to the ends of the earth, and those end up generally being the people one doesn't take too much notice of. I think you've got to choose when you speak and what you say wisely, and that there is intent behind it. It doesn't have to be right, but you have to believe in it. And when you put something like that forward, people will always look at you as someone who has a voice and has insight, and it'll always be valid. So I think, yeah, just to make sure that you listen and you understand as much as you put out there, so that when you do, you're always answering or sort of putting your opinion forward in a way that means something. Then you will always be a valid participant in the room.
Okay, thank you. And my next question will be, since this pandemic, we know that the world has been forced to move to the digital age, and a lot of people a lot of people have lost their jobs, and a lot of people will be moving into the communication space. We see we have a lot of people on social media who are doing their own things, content creators, and we'll have a lot of that. And I'd like to know, how do you think the industry is ready for that? Because a lot of people are going to be transitioning into advertising and communications. So do you think the industry is ready for that move?
I mean, I think it was already happening, in all honesty. I think maybe it's been a bit fast-tracked now with COVID-19, but I think on the whole, a huge amount was going online already. A lot of tools have been developed to help entrepreneurs get the kind of exposure that they need for their businesses. And, you know, I think this has just sort of highlighted it or shone a spotlight on it. I think it has always been there. So I think the industry is ready for it. I think all agencies are prepared for this kind of marketing. I still don't think that any of the more traditional channels are going anywhere. I think TV and radio are going to be just as big. But I think when it comes to the online space, everyone's kind of already been there. It's just now far more visible. So yeah, bring it on.
Okay, thank you. And I think my next question I'm gonna take to Mpume. So as a Black female in power amongst a board of men, what would you want a young Black woman who's looking up to you to learn from you?
Firstly, I'm so excited to see you here. I didn't recognize you until now. I was a student at Boston Media House. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so what I'd say, you know, to young Black females is that we can't compare ourselves to men. You know, there's nothing to compare ourselves to men about. We've got different ambitions. We've got different perspectives. We've got different strengths. And we must just, you know, forge down a path that we create for ourselves, because why would we want to compare ourselves to men? You know, there's nothing to compete there. That's my perspective. We must just stay focused, hone our strengths, hone our perspectives, just be great at what we're doing.
Thank you very much for that. And I think the second lesson would be, what's that one, the second question would be, what's that one lesson that keeps you growing and going? I mean, you've come so far, and how do you stay where you are but still achieving more?
It's courage. It's courage to want to grow. And with wanting to grow is, you know, you need to be open to making mistakes, because growth comes with mistakes, and you will make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. But I grow from them because of my courage of wanting to make mistakes, of wanting to grow. So that's my one advice that I would give to the youngsters, is to have the courage to grow.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And lastly, Nkhabiseng, my question to you is at what point did you feel that it was the right time for you to leave a full-time job with a guaranteed salary to start your own agency, and what motivated you to doing that?
I mean, I think it definitely happened in stages, but I fortunately had someone who I wanted to do it with, which really, I think, helps from a courage perspective to keep motivating one another to achieve the goals that we have in place, and reminding ourselves are we still on the path that we want to be on? I do remember a distinct moment when I went to Design Indaba. So people who want to keep your employees, don't send them to Design Indaba. And I felt really inspired to try, because I felt, you know, we're young, we don't have a lot of responsibility. There's so much opportunity in the industry, and it felt like there's no time greater than the present. Looking at all the young people on that stage telling their stories, whether it was like lab experiments, product design experiments, so many instances of people just trying ideas out, kind of really inspired us to go, you know what, let's try this idea out. It's not even as crazy as the things that these people are trying out. They're trying to grow meat from an organism. You know, all we want to try is do advertising independently. So it felt like the one like nudge of bravery that was required in that moment. But I think, as I say, it was a phase, you know, it was a phased thing where we would talk about it continually and try and keep ourselves inspired to still try it out over like 2 or 3 years. And then ultimately the time just came where we thought, well, you know, now is not going to be any worse than if we do it next year. So we decided to go for it on that perspective. But I don't know that courage, like in its like true heroic form, was the driving force. I kind of feel like we were like, yeah, okay, you know, let's just try it. You know, I didn't feel super brave and like, we're gonna do this. I definitely felt more like, I'm gonna give it a shot. If it sucks, I'm gonna apply for another job. You know. So I don't want to lie and make it seem a lot, you know, more bold than it actually was.
It's a very honest answer. Thank you very much for it. And I think my last question would be, since we deal with you work with already established brands. I mean, I've seen some of your work. Some of them are up and coming brands, but mostly we have established brands who already have a tone, already have a voice, who've set their mark. And how do you handle clients like that who already come with that conditioning that I want my brand to communicate like this, especially since we're in the digital age, we create work for social media. And how do you then handle clients in trying to transition them into understanding how social media works? Because I feel that's always a problem.
I mean, you are right. It has its challenges, because I think the temptation is we're getting communication right in every other channel. This is what we do. It's super scientific, and this is our methodology. We're going to take that onto social. But what we've tried to do is always make clients aware of what the context is that they are trying to get into. So this is the picture of social media 2020. This is a picture of your communication. How do we make this person not come into this world and be the nerdiest person at the party? How do we make this person still be themselves? By person, I mean the brand, and speak authentically, but really be aware and have decorum of where they are. And that's done a lot through strategy. I've grown such a deep respect for strategy in running my own business, because I think a lot of the time when you're sitting in a creative department, then you're pulled into a strat presentation and you're kind of like, yeah, what even is this? And there's like, a generally cynical tone around listening to what the strat is. I think in business, I've started to see the value of marrying a client's commercial objectives with what ends up coming out creatively, because it can be the difference between someone coming onto Twitter and being like that awkward uncle that's sending a text message to everyone, thinking they're sending a direct message. But being able to like set out for a client with clarity, without making it seem like you're stupid, we're clever, you're old, we're young and funky. Just from a factual perspective, here are the numbers, here's some insights, here's great context, and here's what we think you can be like in this environment. tends to work. Sometimes it doesn't work. And in those cases, then we like to track. Social media offers you the capability to track like no other medium. So fine, we're going to go with what you suggest. If you're adamant about it, let's see how it works. Let's see if it gets engagement. Let's see if it gets sales. And at the end of this period, when we show you the report of how this approach is doing, hopefully you'd be more receptive to our suggestions going forward. But I think really learning to take out the arrogance of going to a client and making them feel as though, they don't know anything about what you know, because that yields like a defensive client, and it can be a terrible scenario. So yeah, we just try and use data and illustrate if it's not working and what we can do to make it work.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Cool.
All right. We have come to the end of the evening. We are about 15 minutes late. So I just want to say thank you to our audience members for hanging on and listening in so carefully and quietly. I want to also say thank you to the mentees, all of you, for being on here and asking your questions and doing your research. I think that this evening is designed to inspire, but you guys are so inspiring with the questions you ask. So it's really, really wonderful to hear them. And I love the sessions because I learn a lot. And then finally, to our mentors, thank you to each of you for being here tonight. I always think that true transformation and growth of the industry takes place with investment. And you're doing this free of charge. This is your time that you're giving. And so it really means a lot, not just to Simone and us, but to everyone here and to the industry. So thank you for doing that. And then please watch out. There'll be more events coming up in the next few months. Cool.
Well, also just to say that all the mentees, like, okay, guys, the purity that they fed you is not the same purity that they fed us. So these questions are awesome. I'm excited. Like, I'm so happy. Like, you guys are brilliant. Like, wow. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Coolio. Thanks, Pritesh. Are you still out there? Should we say thanks? Are you still?
New message. You get a new message. Great. Thank you.